choir. I like how the little crowns are kind of the color of blood today. Kind of symbolic for our story. I know the Bible studies, or if you tried to read this material on your own, you're probably thinking, good heavens, why are we even reading this material? So 2 Samuel chapters 13 through 19, and it does continue, are pretty dark. So what I'd say for us at the get-go is when we are able to face things that are uncomfortable yet true, we become better people. When we are able to face things that are uncomfortable and true, we become better people. So that's kind of one of the ethical tactics going on in 2 Samuel today. Maybe all of 1 and 2 Samuel. Our theme has been moral excellence in messy times. And boy, it's a pretty messy streak here in this second part of 2 Samuel. So let's weigh in. So we know David. And the irony we learned last week was David, across 1st and part of 2 Samuel, is this paragon of ethical virtue until last week. David commits adultery, he lies, and he gets somebody murdered. So he just falls into a very deep ethical pit. So that was concerning his neighbor Bathsheba, and then he had an advisor, Nathan, straighten him out about his self-deception. But it seems that David's fall from perfection, or probably fake perfection, unleashes a watershed of brokenness in the next generation. So David has a bunch of kids, and one of his kids, Amnon, his son, rapes his half-sister Tamar. It is a horrific thing. And then, in addition, treats her like trash. So that's a very terrible injustice. That's in 2 Samuel 13. So Amnon assaults Tamar. And then in the mix of that, Absalom, another son, rises and takes in his sister Tamar and seeks justice, comfort, and peace for her. So in that part of the story, Absalom, that was the group we saw today, David's son, Absalom, was quite the hero. But since that heroic effort of protecting Tamar, Absalom takes vengeance on his own brother Amnon and has him murdered. And then that creates a terrible heartache for King David. David puts Absalom into exile, so Absalom is living far away. So it's a very sad, broken family. That's the reality of it. So into this story, and today we're going to focus on King David. You know King David. His son Absalom, so that was the group. We had group Absalom, David, Absalom. And then there is a third character that we'll focus on today, and that is David's commander, Joab. So Joab just keeps showing up. So if you happen to be reading across this part of the Bible and getting lost and trying to figure out what characters to pay attention to, some of them you can ignore. But Joab is one to watch. So Joab, he just keeps showing up. Joab, when Absalom was in exile, before our story today, Joab arranges for David to soften his heart and allow Absalom back into Jerusalem. So Joab arranges for that. And David's like, okay, Absalom can come back into town, but I don't want to look at him. Make sure he stays on his own property. He does his own thing, but I need a boundary with this guy. It's just too painful. He killed my other son, Amnon. I'm not looking at Absalom. So Joab does this negotiation so that David says, okay, Absalom can come back. So Absalom moves back close to Jerusalem. Some years pass, and then Absalom is putting more pressure on Joab to negotiate with his dad, the king. Absalom says to Joab, come on, I want to get back in the good graces. I want to live in court. Come on. And Joab's like, trying to be a diplomat negotiator about it. Well, Joab didn't move fast enough for Absalom. So Absalom, anybody read that story? It's very bizarre. What does Absalom do to Joab? Burns his field. That'll get your attention. So Absalom burns Joab's field, and so Joab's like, okay, whatever, and arranges for a reconciliation between father and son, King David and Absalom. So when we get to the end of chapter 14, there is beautiful peace going on there. But then turn the page. The next thing Absalom does while he's in Jerusalem, newly forgiven by his dad, is he starts buying some nice rides. He starts influencing people around him. And then he points out, my dad, he didn't set up a very good government system, did he? Too bad I'm not helping you guys out. Oh, what the heck, I'll help you out. So he becomes a charismatic politician, setting himself as a judge and a arbiter of the people. And he just schmoozes his way into everybody's heart. Verse 5 says, and the people's hearts were stolen by Absalom. So on the surface, Absalom looks like a public servant, but he's actually a manipulator. He is solely doing this to wield power. What's Absalom's next move? He lies to his dad. He says to King David, I'm going to go to Hebron because you know how religious I am. I'm going to go to Hebron and worship the Lord there. What does Absalom do in Hebron? He marshals his forces even further. The conspiracy deepens. He dupes some people with him. His power grows. The coup plot is found out by King David. So King David hears, Absalom is coming for me. So King David strategically decides he needs to vacate Jerusalem. So King David leaves Jerusalem, and his entourage goes with him across the Jordan River to the other side. So David is leaving, and if you've read these chapters, it gets kind of confusing because all these characters come out of the woodwork to aid and abet King David and his flight from Jerusalem. But note that King David's people are above board, they're sad, they're offering him food and help, and it's very tragic and humane. Whereas the people with Absalom moving toward Jerusalem, they've been duped and they offer terrible counsel. So the story sets up two different groups of people, one around David and one around Absalom. Well, David is a very savvy warrior. So as he exits Jerusalem, he sets up a spy ring involving the priests and their sons and a couple of other people. He sends in a person named Hushai. And he's like, you guys stay here, figure out what's going on, and then let me know while I'm in hiding by the Jordan River. So David does that, and David also knows how to set up troops and commanders and things like that. So across time, and it says that 20,000 people died in a battle over the dynasty. Across time, David's troops get the upper hand. So David's pretty sure he's going to win. So the last step of the battle is where we were today. David instructs his commanders, including Joab, I know the end is near. But when you see my son, deal gently. Deal gently with Absalom, okay? You got that? So that was the instruction everybody heard. But then what happens to Absalom? Absalom gets caught in some trees, and Joab, the commander, hears about it, and Joab kills Absalom. And then David hears about it. He doesn't know how his son dies, but he just hears that his son Absalom dies. And then at the end of chapter 18, and the beginning of 19, there's very big drama with King David. My son, oh, Absalom, Absalom, my son, oh, my son. David is in such grief. He is inconsolable. He wishes that he has died instead of his son. What an interesting story. How would you have felt if you were King David? So a lot of the place we would go is, well, he's a father. And no matter what, he's a father, and his son has died. So, of course he's grieving. Of course he's sad. But then you might also say, okay, let's think about this son. This son has killed your other son. You personally have exiled this son because he's so dangerous, and also refused to see him because you knew he was problematic. This son plotted and lied to you. And we didn't even talk about this. When Absalom comes into town, he does such a odious, hideous, horrible thing of assaulting others. Terrible. Absalom did all this, and your response is grief. Oh, I wish I had died. It turns out Joab, David's commander, is watching this whole thing. And Joab kind of grabs the wheel again and says to David, listen, buddy, if you're going to sit here and cry and weep and grieve, here's what you're signaling to everybody else. You don't care about them. And all these troops, all your other family members, everybody else in society thinks you don't care about them, and you're their leader. What message are you sending them? So David has to sober up and be a leader. So what are our takeaways in all this? Is family loyalty number one? Do we just look at our family loyalty, our friend loyalty, and say, that's the way it is? It seems that this string of stories is saying there's a next level loyalty that we all are called to think about. If this whole bunch of stories we've been reading across the summer and now the fall, it's a whole bunch of stories that help us sort out tricky ethical problems. Because when we look at something that is uncomfortable and yet true, it makes us better people. So these stories are modeling the reality of uncomfortable, violent, terrible things and being uncomfortable. and not being afraid of being uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. And there's a certain level of uncomfortable that's a part of life in order for us to awaken from self-deception and see the truth. And we all need each other to awaken from simple loyalties in order to see bigger truths. This week, a couple of things. Well, first of all, sometimes, let's just talk a little bit about loyalty. So sometimes loyalty is person A and person B. And person A is loyal to person B, and person B is loyal to person A. And this is a beautiful, wonderful bonding thing. It makes all the difference in the world. When we are loyal to a friend, sometimes we kind of keep quiet and things work out. When we're loyal to our spouse, well, there's a covenant and there's marriage, and that's very important. And parent-child bond, sibling bond, super important thing. Well, I saw a diagram this week, and I thought, heck, I think this applies maybe to taking our understanding to loyalty to another level. Instead of a line, imagine a triangle. So you have person A, person B as the base of the triangle, and then at the top of the triangle, I'll say the letter C. A and B may have loyalty for each other, but a healthier way to think about it, and I think the Bible helps us be more nuanced about loyalty, is that there's another dimension of loyalty. And it works a lot better when A is loyal to a concept C, and B is also loyal to a concept C. At a simple level, the concept C could be their relationship. So we're each loyal to having a good relationship. That's, and it's kind of a fundamental marriage principle too. And in Christian marriage, we think about it's not just A and B, but there's a spiritual dimension of God that makes the relationship work better. But you're invested, not just like this, but you're invested in something bigger than yourselves, a project that you're both working on. So don't take it personally, but you just say, here's the thing we're working on. We're working on this C, our relationship. We're working on a project. So depersonalize and say we're working on being better. We're working on healing, whatever it is. For David, his life wasn't just his son. It's actually true of all of us. It's not just one relationship. We live in society. We live in communities. We have competing loyalties that we're called to think about, especially as people of faith. But David in particular, yes, he had this loyalty here, David and Absalom, but David also had a next level thing that he was responsible for. All the other people. He was loyal to God. He was loyal to a covenant. There was something more that he needed to see and be loyal to. But he was temporarily blind. He was so stuck with his son. And Joab had to help him get unstuck. Joab knew about Absalom. You might say Joab had been burned by Absalom. Joab saw the pattern that King David could not see in his own son. And that's a reality. And it gets named in the Bible. Sometimes we are so caught up in a particular form of loyalty, we do not want to look at something uncomfortable, and so we don't see the truth. Joab was able to look at something uncomfortable. The pattern of Absalom's life. Absalom was an arsonist. You are not going to make peace with an arsonist. Joab knew that. There was no person A, person B, oh, and now we're all working on C. Absalom could care less about C. Absalom only cared about himself. And that's a reality of peacemaking. Sometimes we just need to be wise, not have our heads buried in the sand, but soberly and with humility say, this isn't a real relationship here. This is phony. And we can't keep our heads buried in the sand. This week, the Nobel Prize was awarded. Did you see that? Did you see who got it? Narges Mohammadi. And where is she? What country is she in? Iran. And is she living in a nice home in Iran? No, where is she living? She's living in jail, a notorious prison. And it took a couple days for the Iranian news agency to respond to the fact that the Nobel Prize Peace winner is from Iran and currently resides in a notorious jail. And their response was, well, she's a rabble-rouser. She's trouble. She makes us uncomfortable. So things that make you uncomfortable aren't true? Be aware. Be very aware about what makes you uncomfortable, because it could be something that is very, very true that you are not able to face. And with God's grace, may we all be able to face more uncomfortable things so that we can experience the truth, a truth that sets us free, that sets everybody free. And for our church, our relationships, things that we're working on right now, that C at the top of the triangle, and now I'll call it a pyramid, because we're all in this project as human beings on this planet. So many relationships. But I hope the big project that we can talk about, the C, one simple word, is kindness. We're all on a project of kindness. We all have things to learn. We all can work together. But we need to be aware that not all partners are on board with the C. They'd rather burn things down. So we are wise when we read the Bible. We see uncomfortable things. We learn the truth, and I think it makes us better at being peacemakers in the world. To God be the glory. Amen.